Hello one, hello all. Welcome back into the LPL English Twitch or YouTube channel, your unofficial coverage of the greatest region in the world known as the LPL. As we are a series before our penultimate series, we are down to our final four teams. We've got Billy Gaming slotted into a first stand spot and awaiting one of our three remaining opponents. And of course, we've got another opponent waiting our matchup, that of course being Anyone's Legend, your number one seeded team heading into the Split 1 playoffs. Taking on the Weibo Gaming squad, still looking to prove that they can battle with the Titans. I, of course, be your play-by-play caster tonight, Leo Slayer Silverman, joined by the ever-illustrious, the encyclopedia of League of Legends esports in the current iteration, K-Man, Super K-Man rocks on YouTube. K-Man, it is a pleasure, my friend, and I guess I'll start this off by stamping this an AL-favored caster desk, I guess. That's, I guess we can throw that one out there. Also, our first series, either of us doing an AL series. How about that?
Yeah, I know. How does that end up happening, right? We're the two that go to bat the most for AL on this entire production, and somehow this is the first time that we get to see Anyone's Legend play in 2026 in cast. I'm very excited. I cannot wait for this series. I think these two teams have both had both great and terrible moments throughout the playoffs and the regular season itself, so it's all really going to be about whose form is in today. And you know what? This is a classic LPL matchup of we'll see how it goes, and those early games are going to be real fun.
And that's what makes the LPL playoffs so fun, is you're in for a roller coaster. There's a lot of outcomes, but outcomes that have already been shown and already played out is, of course, most of the playoffs, as we'll take an overarching look at Split 1 postseason as it currently stands. K-Man, and I might have stolen your thunder when I throw this one over to you talking about the two teams ahead of our matchup, but just give me your overarching reaction to where we're at in the bracket, and maybe how you thought it was going to go before we got to this point, before we got into these double elim playoffs.
I don't think a lot of people were expecting JDG to take down Anyone's Legend, but I'll be the one person to come out and say that, yeah, that was something that was definitely on the radar for at least a couple of us here, not only at LPL English, but I think, you know, LPL watchers would have said that JDG were one of those teams that you had to be scared of. That means that AL kind of has to fight their way through this lower bracket. BLG awaiting, of course, all of these teams in the finals is expected. You know, Knight and company have been has performed up to expectation so far in the playoffs, but JDG is a very beatable team in those lower bracket finals. Whoever wins here today actually has a pretty good shot of being able to pick up another series win, make their way to finals, and potentially be that second team representing the LPL at first stand.
Yeah, K-Man, I think of our top three favored teams, I guess, it's really fun. I think BLG come across as, in my opinion, the best early game, the best laning team. JD Gaming have cemented themselves, at least for right now, in my opinion, as the clear best team fighting team. When you get past 30 minutes, this team looks like executioners. And then we, of course, have AL, who have always been known as the best kind of macro team, the best on the map. So we'll have to see which one of these, strengths of those three teams can really prevail. But let's introduce formally, as we get going here, Anyone's Legend roster as it currently stands, which is how it's been for over a year now by this point. Flandra's still the top laner. Tarzan, the king of the jungle, your Split 1 MVP. Shanks, the mid laner right next to him. And then the bottom lane of Hope and Kyle. A stock standard Anyone's Legend roster as it's been for a while. Only difference, obviously, being the switching of the coaching staff, K-Man, coming into 2026.
Yeah, I mean, why break what isn't broken, right? You don't need to fix anything on this team. It's all phenomenal, and quite frankly, most of them have played up to par so far in 2026. I think there have been moments, some up and down situations for a couple of these players that maybe haven't been as good, and that is the reason that they are sitting here in lower bracket. But even then, you're talking about a playoff run so far where a couple of really important players have been able to step up, and I think the main one that we're looking at in these clips is Shanks, who has had a fantastic playoff run for AL so far. You have players like Tarzan and Kyle that have been the faces for AL over the past couple of, years and the past, couple of months, and really, they've not been up to par so far in this playoff run. It's been up to players like Shanks, like Flandra, to be able to really step up and carry this team in some big moments, and at least right now, that has been a pretty consistent thing for this team to rely on over their lower bracket run.
Yeah, K-Man, and for anyone at home, K-Man is the biggest Tarzan guy in the world that I know personally, so for him to be saying Tarzan's not playing up to par, you need to take that seriously. I probably have mentioned how much I love Kyle 30 times on LPL English broadcast. I don't think he's been playing up to par. So the fact that we have Shanks in such a prime position is frustrating for the aspect of really thinking, okay, if we could just time up this level of Shanks play with Tarzan and Kyle doing what we expect them to do, this team should be the Split 1 champion.
I think that's the expectation, right? They're the number 1 seed for a reason. This is a team that came into the year with anything other than another championship is a disappointment, and I think that still rings true. The thing I really want to watch out for with Tarzan and with Shanks in particular as a duo is, can they get on the same page in terms of where they want to put their resources in the mid game? It really does feel like Shanks has been a bit more selfish as of late, which I think can be a good thing for this team, but Tarzan needs to be there alongside him if they're going to take a lot of these fights around the 15-minute mark. They both need to be in good spots to be able to win them against Weibo.
Yeah, so we'll have to see if that mid-jungle synergy can get back on track more towards the Tarzan side, as we've been talking about as of late. But when we talk about mid lane and jungle, it is a veteran matchup on the other side that Shanks and Tarzan will be going up against. So let's introduce Weibo Gaming and their 2 vets in the jungle and mid lane position. You already know them. It's JJ and Xiaohu. They've been part of Weibo for a while now. Zika obviously replacing Breathe coming into 2026, one of the main acquisitions for Weibo. But the big get really felt like former BLG AD carry Elk, who earned first team All-Pro AD carry nods from both our squad and the official LPL rankings of the All-Pro teams, paired next to another up-and-coming support that's been pretty impressive in Arha.
Yeah, this bot lane has been surprisingly great at the beginning of this year. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's been no reason to expect them to play well, because obviously Elk is a very, accomplished player here in the LPL over the past couple of years. But Arha, I think, has been really fun to watch. And there have been some moments in the playoffs where he's actually done a lot of the heavy lifting in a couple of these team fights, as we're seeing. There have been some big playmaker moments from him. I think especially on things like Thresh and Leona that really have the onus on them to make those plays happen around the map in the early game. He's been really effective at driving a lot of the aggression for Weibo Gaming. I'm going to need to see that here today. Kyle, obviously a very aggressive support, a big playmaker in his own right. If you can actually get that bot lane into a good spot, we know what Elk can do with resources. You said it yourself.
Oh, yeah.
First team All-Pro, MVP vote for me personally, and so he was incredible throughout all of this year. It's all about, can this bot lane play synergistically together, and if you can get both of them on the right page, especially with the way AL's bot lane has been playing in the playoffs, there's some real danger here for AL if Weibo get going.
Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about the Elk side of this matchup, because I also voted him as my MVP. I know he didn't. I don't believe he ended up taking that award home for us. I think we also, as LPL English, gave it over to Tarzan. But here's the thing, right? Regular season awards are nice. Playoff success is a much bigger statement, and that's where we kind of found this match would be pretty intriguing, K-Man, because we obviously have hyped up Elk a lot. I've been the proponent that this might have been one of the better splits we've seen from Hope on the other side from an AD carry department in the regular season. But ever since we've gotten to playoffs, I don't necessarily want to say that Elk has been a liability for Weibo. I think Hope has been kind of a liability for AL in some of these teamfight spots. The point being here, K-Man, we have not seen those guys we saw in the regular split show up in the big spots of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's been very different with just the way that both of these teams have had to play around bot side. We talked about Arha actually playing pretty well in the playoffs. Elk has not really followed suit. I think the main series you're looking at there is the Billy Gaming series, where he was completely neutralized by that BLG bot lane. On in particular with his aggression, really kind of took it to his former bot lane partner on the other side. Hope, somebody that has at times become a bit more invisible as games have become more relevant and as teams have become a little bit more aggressive on the bottom side of the map. I think both of these AD carries have a ton to prove in this series, and if one can step up, especially like if they can play just better than what they have done in previous series, whereas the other one might be a little bit still further behind, that could likely be the difference between one of these teams surviving and moving on, into the lower bracket finals and potentially being done for split number 1.
I mean, that's definitely what has been so key for Weibo's back half success, was the plays that Elk was able to make. Right, and I hate to put so much pressure on him, but the current Weibo roster in this matchup, he's just got to be that otherworldly marksman, I think, if they're going to need a shot here. But of course, we've talked about the junglers a little bit. I do want to quickly mention before we get out onto the stage, our marquee matchup is going to be in the jungle. We just simply couldn't go with another bout between Tarzan and JJK, man.
And it's not just, two historic junglers. They are historic junglers, let me tell you. They played against each other a ton over the last few years, but these are two of the most important players in the league towards their team's success. We've talked a lot about Tarzan and his struggles so far in the playoffs in comparison to his MVP regular season, but we know on his best day he can dominate a series like this. But Jeje has been incredibly good for Weibo in the playoffs up until this point. Almost certainly their most valuable player through this run. If they want an easy shot of being able to get themselves into top 3 for the first time in many years, it's almost certainly going to have to be through this jungler that has really kind of cemented his spot back atop the LPL.
Yeah, and for Jeje, it was obviously just such a tumultuous end to 2025. If you think back to that, holding down the IG jungle spot for only a blanket amount of time before Wei obviously comes in and really starts to shake things up, taking over that spot on that, super team of IG. Jeje, there were a lot of questions on where a player of his caliber could really land in the kind of wacky LPL offseason we had. To see him find this home and sign up to be a part of a project that's going to take time to really get going with the pieces we mentioned. Obviously, they only have 2 off-season acquisitions. They're new to the org, but if you factor in Arha doesn't play all of Split 3, this is a team that, including him, becomes, nearly everybody changed except for Xiaohu. So, and that puts a lot of stress on the jungle position as we know it. So for Jeje to come up here and show out in playoffs, as he's done just so many times before, is really integral. And K-Man, I'm glad you brought it up. But as we start shifting towards the draft, the start of our series, I want to make sure we go on the record in a big playoff series like this. Our awesome producer behind the scenes let me know that most of the LPL, the local LPL talent, are throwing down an AL 3-1 as their big blanket cross statement. K-Man, that is my prediction for this series. I'm curious, what are you going to put down on pen and paper as the statement series score for tonight?
I made a bit of an observation in my prediction for this series where I just worry a lot about the mental of Weibo if they go down 0-2 in a big series like this. I'm a little bit worried about Tarzan just being incredibly motivated coming in here. AL is a team that I think expects themselves to be in a good spot. My prediction was 3-0 for AL. I think they're the better team here today. I think Weibo can absolutely win not only a game, they can win a series. They can be the better team across an entire series here today. More is going to have to go right, and specifically, I really need to see this team adapt as they go further along into a best of series. We've seen some crazy back and forth action. If AL slows the pace down, I think they're going to be favored here.
All right. Well, I certainly agree. The only reason I think that we might not get a 3-0, K-Man, my quick logic is that AL just been prone to throwing singular games against a lot of people right now. So we'll have to see if they can kind of buck that trend against a team that is hungry to show that they can be a part of that tier 1 competitive slot in the LPL that we constantly bring up, being JDG, BLG, and AL. Can they become the dark horse in that 4th spot? We will have to find out as we got our players on the stage here. I do want to shout out Alk Battery, Dimitri, for pointing this out. I couldn't notice it on some of our jerseys, but the captains are all wearing unique gems, right? And it's kind of like when you lose the gem, it becomes a part of the trophy. So I believe our captains are Tarzan and Xiaohu. So I was kind of looking out for that to see if we could see the gems they were wearing, but I couldn't catch it, K-Man.
Yeah, I mean, either way, super cool. It's a really cool idea here in the LPL. One of the coolest things, not to mention the fact that all the jerseys just kind of look awesome this year, as you yourself know very well, Slayer, of course. But I'm just very excited to see how these early games break down as we kind of head into draft here. I need to see this Game 1 draft from Weibo, and I want to see them be aggressive. We know what AL like to pick early on. In a lot of these drafts, they want to go for something like the Pantheon to be able to use the macro influence of Tarzan to spread around the map. Weibo have a lot of ways to be able to counter that early on in a lot of these games, and it's really just about what is left up, or things like Orianna left up, and specifically for me is Rumble left up, because that is such a big pick for Zika, and it has been throughout his entire career.
And first of all, thank you, production, for correcting me. There's Xiaohu, he's the captain for Weibo. Shanks is the captain for AL, so we'll look out for the gemstones from those 2 guys. Maybe it might be on Xiaohu's jacket. He doesn't need to play with the jacket on. But speaking on, some of these proactive jungle picks and just, what champions kind of fit these 2 teams, I do want to, once again emphasize how fun this LPL playoffs has been, because of Best of 5 Fearless has really brought out a lot of fun champion picks. And, you know, a lot of them have been in support. Obviously, we're going to think about last night where Owen wins a Game 5 in Ivia support out of nowhere angle. But what I want to emphasize for AL is the fact that Flandre is still the guy that you never really know what he's going to pick top lane. He's the best Rex side top in the world, but he has a flurry of champions he can go to. I want to see if Kyle can get pretty expressive, and then obviously how those jungle champions, those early, you know, generals of that phase of the game can come into play for these two junglers. But before we really get into draft, as it seems like we have a little bit of an errand pause coming up, K-Man, I think it's important to remember for AL as an organization, no matter, even if I crown them as like the most successful LPL team in 2025 because of what they were able to do internationally, but a year ago, this team did not make a very good run. They ended up short of a first stand position, ended up short of one of those LPL Grand Finals. So right now, this is kind of a big spot here, K-Man, to show that AL can show up to every single international event in the lower bracket now. Extra pressure on that sort of statement.
Well, especially because of all the conversation surrounding AL coming out of this offseason with the new coaching staff, a new support system involved. You know, there was a lot of pressure for AL to, I think, prove a lot of the doubters wrong in terms of being able to replicate that success from last year. They've done so in the regular season. We'll see if they can do so here in the draft. So we jump into game number 1. The Nico Orianna bans I love from AL. You got to get those off of the board against Xiaohu and Arha in particular. But Renekton, Poppy, Varus, no Rumble ban coming in for either team so far. And that likely means it's going to be the first pick here.
Yep, and it's going to be Weibo with that first selection on your red side, as you can obviously see by Zika. Yet to pick a champion here. Vi, interesting last ban as well, so does kind of take away some of those, you know, early power junglers that we want to look for. But I do think this is an interesting spot where AL maybe are signaling they're willing to give up that Rumble because they have a jungle trade that they really like here on this turn, and I would be interested to see if they just go kind of for a mid-jungle synergy with a lot of those heavy-hitting duos still up and available, despite the Orianna and Vi already going down.
Yeah, I think notably Pantheon Rise would be a combo that I'd be very scared of here if I was Weibo to give over in terms of proactivity to AL. These are champions that both of these players, Tarzan and Shanks, play at a really high level, and it's very comfortable for the team in general. Jarvan, as we see a bit of a hover here, would be a strong pick not only for Tarzan, but a takeaway from Jeje. It's been his most played champion across this split, but it's going to be the Azir actually first picked here for Shanks.
It's
actually going to get paired up with that. Exactly. Yeah, going to get paired up with that Jarvan. It takes away the hot pot here with the Rumble Jarvan combo, gives you some scaling, gives you proactivity with the Jarvan. It's a very stable start here for AL, and I imagine we're going to see something tankier on the top side to round it out as well.
It's such a funny spot to see Azir, right? Because yesterday I saw some people reacting to BLG JDG, a series where Azir actually did not make an appearance. Even in the Game 5, does not get through. And everyone was like, wow, Azir priority's in a weird spot here. So Shanks is like, all right, I know Knight's not the Azir guy. Like, people are not really feeling the Azir. I'm feeling the Azir. So, going to lock that one in. Pantheon, though, does really signal that we are going to get those proactive junglers like you're talking about. Interesting note is that Tarzan, I feel like, is going to be a bit more leaning towards team fight prowess with that Cataclysm, and you expect JJ to have a lot more control on the map early with this Pantheon and the ultimate. And with the Yone locked in as well, we are looking to scrap early and often if we're Weibo.
Oh, the fights are coming in from Weibo. Just add to the chaos, right? This is what we wanted to see. Sometimes you see teams that are underdogs come into series like this and say, okay, well, we're going to slow the pace down and give ourselves a ton of options. No, I want to see you try and get that 5K gold lead. That's what I want to see when you feel like you might be underdogs in terms of the expectations. And I think this comp has all the makings to be able to do that right now with the Azir not being able to roam as effectively in the mid lane on the other side. But as I called out earlier, pretty obviously going to be some sort of tank on the top side. It's Sion, the tank of choice here for Flandre. This makes a lot of sense. He is the premier tank player right now in the LPL. Makes a lot of sense going into Rumble in particular to neutralize the laning phase, and both of these comps have really established what they want to do. Weibo fighting early and often, and AL kind of setting up for a potential more dynamic linking.
It's even more skewed when you think about fighting style on top of that, right, K-Man? It is clear from Weibo that they are going to be about kind of pincering, sort of pushing all of AL from both sides of the flank. Somebody's going to be flying in from the front side. Maybe it's like a Fate Sealed. You've got a Pantheon ult over back. You've got a Rumble ult that can come onto the back line. AL looking to stay solidified, kind of like that Aegis Assault, a Pantheon ability. You think about it, just protect front, move forward. That's exactly what they're going to be doing. So let's see how these last 4 selections can really fit into these comp styles. Already loving this ban from AL. Get rid of the Kaisa. Get rid of a damage dealer that can freely fly into the background whenever Pantheon hits a stun or Yone hits a knockup.
Yeah, there are actually some really interesting options left up on the board. The Unara taken off by Weibo. I think that makes sense. It pairs really dangerously with something like the Jarvan in the later part of the game to basically get free setup as you play further along. For Weibo, though, as we're talking about what they might want to go towards as we come out of this, I'm looking at things obviously like the Jhin that I think could be pretty stable if you want to play more for that mid-jungle duo. You have things like Misfortune that I think could also offer a lot in terms of those teamfight ultimates to combo with Rumble, and you can play off of the Pantheon stuns relatively well. The knockup from the Yone also helps in that same vein. It's the Nautilus ban, though, coming out from Anyone's Legend, kind of taking away an engage option. Arhat really has not favored one engager over the other, but he definitely has favored playing engage supports. This still leaves up things like Alistar, Leona, you know, a lot of the more standard ones, but with Bard taken out as well, it definitely is kind of opening the door for more tanky supports to come through.
Really, I'm loving to see that our coaching staffs are pretty locked into trying to fight against each other's comp, but the Seraphine pick basically means, K-Man, that we have secured the whole picture for AL. You see the Seraphine locked in 2026. It is for one thing and one thing only, that Ashe Seraphine, again, front to back team fight style. Perfectly what AL wants to do.
And I think this complements the way that they've set up their draft perfectly because it gives Jarvan a really aggressive way to play early. I actually would love if Weibo ends up taking the Ashe here. I think you almost always benefit. Yeah, I mean, you benefit a lot from the Ashe part of that trade more than the Seraphine part of that trade, in my opinion. But no, just going to be Elk saying, it's fine. We'll counter with our own poke lane. You know, the Ezreal Karma still available. This has been a pretty standard answer overall to Ashe Seraphine globally throughout a lot of this year. And I think, again, both sides are set up to basically be exactly what they want to be. Like I said, I think Ashe Seraphine complements this Jarvan well because it gives him a lane to play for in the mid game, allows that Azir and Sion to be able to scale a little bit more effortlessly without having a lot of priority to fight the Yone and the Pantheon and push forward. But Weibo have so many tools in the mid game to fight already.
Yeah, it is a great first game draft because we are already going to get to see, you know, a lot of games, especially Weibo games, the third game BLG series, like second game BLG series, they draft decap themselves. And it was hard to really like analyze how they truly played in those two matchups because it was like, God, how do you even play these drafts out? This game one came in, there is, I don't want to hear any draft gap, you know, draft kneecap conversation. Both these two teams have drafted really, really well, which means it comes down to one thing and one thing only: execution.
And that's the fun part, right? I think both of these comps have actively solidified what these teams want to do right now. Weibo are the fast, loose, aggressive team that want to skirmish a lot, but that puts pressure on them to be the ones to make priority plays across the map, to be the ones that are pushing the tempo of this game, because you don't really want to get to a late game where you have this Jarvan set up for a Sion frontline that you're going to have a hard time breaking through with Ezreal and Yone as primary damage dealers, and then an Ashe and an Azir on the backline. You can't really afford to get to the 5v5 section, especially with all the side laning potential that's coming in as well. So very excited to see this, but Weibo definitely have to show me something in the early game exactly like we wanted.
A series to determine so much for what the rest of this early counter looks like for our two teams. It is still a Weibo squad that, despite no matter what happens here, they could get 3-0 spanked by Anyone's Legend, and they'd still have one of their highest finishes in over a year. But AL on the other side trying to survive their worst finish in that same moment of time. The lowest they finished was Split 1 of 2025 when they came out at third place themselves as well. So that's what makes this matchup so fun, K-Man, is the fact that, you know, no matter what we get from this matchup, one of these two teams goes home with kind of a new record. And we start here back on Summer's Rift, as always, Game 1. Anyone's Legend, Weibo Gaming. Bring me in those playoff Jayos.
Playoff Jayos ringing through Slayer, at the very least, in game number 1. Man, I'm just excited for this matchup. Both of these teams have so much on the line in terms of their responsibility, what they expected from themselves, and this is a huge game 1 with a lot of power picks being taken off the board and Fearless to kind of showcase where we are going to be at. We're going to be taking a look at this level 1 trade on the bot side as we get our customary heal trade, but barrier popped as well,
Yeah,
so
there's
definitely
caveat,
not too
right?
bad.
Yeah, it's a slight win. We always like to joke about those level 1 heal trades, but it is significant that Hope also trades out that barrier. His bottom lane is going to be the early game focus. You've got a Scion top lane. Flandra's going to chill in that regard. I expect Shanks to get pushed and be safe into Xiao, who hasn't been the strongest laner of a lot of our mid laners, so that one's going to be pretty stable. It's this double range bottom lane that is we're going to really have to get into the nitty gritty with to see who can prevail, especially in those farm tallies early. As you can see, Hope and Kyle already looking to step up to try and neutralize this wave state, but we talked about these junglers and how proactive they want to be early. Good call, K-Man. Here comes Tarzan, king of the jungle, looking to make his first effect onto the Rift here. Problem is, you do have an arcane shift on Elk, so he gets out, but they turn onto Arha, and he doesn't even flash. He just accepts his fate, and it's that easy. Anyone's legend strike first in our series.
Yeah, he doesn't flash because Jarvan holds the flag and drag for the entire gank. He doesn't even use it at any point. It's a free first blood, and it goes onto the Ashe in particular. This is the one lane you were looking at for Weibo and feeling a little bit concerned about because it's Ezreal Karma, and it can be so explosive if you give any gold over. Well, here you go. Now the Ashe has a free kill and will be accelerated in this laning phase. That's a big start for anyone's legend.
Just what the doctor ordered, and AL getting back to what they have been so good at, and mainly Tarzan as well. As much as he is our Split 1 MVP, he has come under the most fire I've seen him really come under ever since being a part of this AL team with some of these playoff single game performances. So needs to stack up against, again, a foe that he is very familiar with, the JJ. That first gank already setting them on the right path forward here. It's also important to remember that on the flip side here for Weibo, part of the reason they got spanked so bad by BLG was game 2 and 3 again came in. They just lost the game in the first 10 minutes. So this is a team we're still looking to have, you know, to show they have the ability to be proactive and come out with decent spots out of the early game.
That is the fear, and that's kind of why I wanted them to pick something that forced them to play fast and loose in the early game, because I feel like they've gotten, you know, kind of, the lights have blinded them a bit in the playoffs so far in terms of being able to play their typical early game style. I do want to see them be able to try and rebound and recover. This bot lane is certainly not over by any stretch of the imagination, but Tarzan doing a great job to generate that lead early. My question now is, when does Jeje get active? Of course, he is going to hit level 6, you know, a little bit soon. And once we start getting to the spot where the Pantheon can basically be anywhere, that's when I'm expecting this team to be really aggressive in terms of the plays that they're making, especially now that Summoners, at the very least, are coming back up on the bottom side. No barrier going to be burned by Elk in that play either. So definitely still some advantages. Only a 500 gold lead for now, as Zika definitely showing that rumble power on the top side.
I was watching the map, and Shanks was taking a pretty aggressive kind of recall spot in that side brush. But it looks like he was just trying to scout out to see where JJ was on his clear, which he does accomplish, or at least his pings are correct. I don't know if they have the visual confirmation that JJ is onto his second clear, rolling back down as we see Tarzan take that reset, and that clear advantage also showing through in the jungle already. Tarzan, with his timing on his reset, comes back to the tunneler compared to those two long swords. So this Cloud Drake's funding about 10-ish seconds. Tarzan will be a little bit slower to this play, but with Rot Prio being juggled by that side of his matchup, could see him come down here and try and flex his muscles towards this first objective of the game.
It could be quite risky here to potentially go for that fight. Definitely a bit of a stat advantage for the Jarvan, but not something that is guaranteed by any stretch. Pantheon, even at level 5, is going to be a bit of a menace to try and deal with, as we do see him in the area. He is